For the last and final time this season here on ITG, we're going to have Phil Steele to talk with us. We're going to talk some of the biggest games in the college football playoff. We're also going to talk about the West Virginia matchup against Memphis in the bowl game and a little talk about Rich Rodriguez returning to Morgantown, all here on ITG.
You are now watching Believe.
ITG.
With special guest, Phil Steele.
Author of the College Football Bible.
You can see things before they happen.
Well, I definitely like West Virginia's offensive line.
All you got to do is bet on the winner and you'll never lose.
I like the Mountaineers to win this one.
Taylor, touchdown!
To me, the key matchup here is that West Virginia run game. Hey, a real pleasure being on. Thanks for having me on the In the Gun podcast.
Because once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
Back in the gun here. I'm Schuyler, Callihan. That is the signal caller, Jed Drenning. We're going to talk with Phil Steele here momentarily, getting his thoughts on all the happenings in college football, especially on that big move that happened in Morgantown here in the recent days with Rich Rod coming back to coach the Mountaineers for the second time in his coaching career. So we'll see what he has to say about all of that. But first, a word from our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. BetOnline, where the game starts. And of course, this episode of ITG is brought to you in part by our friends at Toothman Ford. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. So, Jed, the Scooters it's the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. It's coming up here soon. We've got the game preview already in the books. We've got our ITG picks now going to be going to our last ones for the year. I believe I have a marginal lead. So let's see if I can stack on that here on our ITG pick'ems.
I was thinking, Schuyler, I should have brought my trophy as the weekly pick champion on In the Gun for 2024.
I guess I get the
need whatever support I can
WWE
get.
belt. Maybe that's what I get.
Because I'm sure not winning this. I haven't fared well recently on these things. So let's jump into some prop fun for West Virginia's bowl matchup with the 10-2 Memphis Tigers. Okay. First prop point. Fast starts. West Virginia in last year's bowl game, as we remember, against Carolina and Charlotte. Shot play on a Yankee concept, 75-yard touchdown from Garrett to Traylon Ray. Of course, T-Ray won't be playing in this bowl game on the shelf with the injury. But as I was watching tape this week, watching Memphis tape this week and last week, one of the things that stood out to me, North Texas scored 75-yard touchdowns on their first two plays of the game.
Wow.
Against this Memphis defense. So I thought back to West Virginia's bowl game last year. So let's have some fun with this first prop choice we're going to make here. Question number one. Will West Virginia's first play of the game, whenever we have the ball, be a shot play? A pass attempt, here's how we'll define it. A pass attempt of 25-plus yards in the air.
Okay.
24 doesn't count. That might be a crossing route, right?
Yeah.
So 25 or more. What say you?
It's very tempting because I could see it being some little trick play right out of the gate too. But you never know what to expect in these bowl games. What the heck? Yeah, I'll go for it. I'll take the bite here. I'll say they'll take a shot deep, and what the heck? I'll even give it who it's going to go to. I'm going to say Huddy's going to come down with a 40-yard catch.
Okay, for fun, I'll say no. I'll even be ambitious and say, because we're going to force a turnover inside the 20 and start at their 17-yard line. Okay.
All right.
So
all right.
yeah. Or first net, we can't do it because it'll be so deep in their territory. That's the fun I'm going to have with it. All right. Question two, rushing. Memphis is very formidable on the ground. Now, as you know, they got a transfer running back who's a talent from South Carolina who ran for 700 yards in the SEC last year. He's been highly productive for them this year. Over the course of the last two seasons, the magic number for Memphis on the ground has been 100-plus rushing yards. When they run for 100, just 100, they're 18-1. When they're held under 100, they're 2-4. So, question number two, will this West Virginia defense be at its best at the point of attack and swell up against the run to hold the Tigers under 100, 99 or less, to give the Mountaineers that much better chance to win that you've seen when Memphis struggles to run the football. Well, if a Torma Malbin crew come through, let's see what say you?
You said we're going with 100.
100. That's their number. That's their sweet spot.
I I feel like they will eclipse the 100-yard mark. I do. I think a lot of points are going to be scored in this game, and I don't know that there's going to be really a whole lot of stops. I could be completely wrong on that, but I feel like the offenses have the advantage in this matchup, so I'm going to go over. But I don't think it's by a lot. I think most of what Memphis is probably going to do is going to be damage through the air.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say no. Start with this. Josiah Trotter, not going to play. So
Yeah.
that's a big hit in the box for us. So I'm going to say no as well. All right. Running quickly through our last couple. Number 3, time of possession. Memphis is number 3 nationally in time of possession. That's their game with an average of 33-38 of possession time per game. Chunky. West Virginia is number 4 in the Big 12. We still try and play that style of football. Sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't. Our average is 31-51. Now, what's interesting, on the road, we kind of circle the wagons because we're number 1 in time of possession, away from home, I should say, with an average of 34-45. Question number 3, quite simply, who will win the time of possession battle, Memphis or West Virginia, with interim head coach Chad Scott, who, of course, coaches the running back room, which could influence this as well?
I'm glad you mentioned that because I was like, that's exactly where I was going to go. I'm going to go with the little bit of a stunner here and go with West Virginia because I think that that's what they need to do to be able to win this game is to hold on to the football. And Chad Scott's going to want to run it. I'm interested to see what style and pace that they play with. I feel like they're going to want to slow it down. So I'm going to go with West Virginia.
I'm going to go with Memphis, and here's why. I'm going to be optimistic because I've had to dive into the numbers, and strangely, in our losses, we've had greater possession time than in our wins because it seems like this year when our offense is really flowing and humming, that's not our bag as much as it was last year when we were just this dominant clock chewing animal. So I'm going to hope that we don't win it because that means that we have a better chance to win the football game in this twisted way. So maybe let Memphis play their brand to keep away just enough to get us with some big plays and chunk plays in our flow of the offense that we want to play. So that's my logic on that. And then finally, let's wrap up with question number 4. I don't know the answer to this as I ask. So I wanted to be transparent, objective, and fair. Will Coach Rod make an appearance in the booth with us on Tuesday night in Frisco? He did so the last time he took the job. Yeah, he did it in the Music City Bowl in Nashville. He did a quick interview, up in the booth. Will he do the same this time?
I'm going to say no because I want to go the non-interesting route. I'm going to say no because he's going to be busy putting his staff together and hitting that transfer portal. So I'm going to go no.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes to
I
disagree.
hope it's
there
yes.
We go.
I hope it's yes.
All right.
So that's our picks for this week. On the other side, we've got Phil Steele. We're going to get his thoughts on some of these games. And, of course, that head coaching hire of Rich Rodriguez. Stay tuned. We'll be back here on ITG.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
Back in the gun here for the final time this season with Phil Steele. Make sure you get all of his stuff on his website. Check out his Twitter, his YouTube page. Phil, thanks for joining us once again for the final time, and thank you for all your work and contributions to the show this season.
Hey, a real pleasure being on with you guys. It's always fun talking West Virginia football.
Absolutely, and we got a lot to get to today. We're going to talk a little bit about the college football playoff games, West Virginia's bowl game, and we'll also get your thoughts there at the end about West Virginia's hire of Rich Rodriguez. So let's go ahead and kick it off with the first round games of the playoff, and let's start with number 10 Indiana and number 7 Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman said he had to Google Kirk Cignetti. I think he probably found out a lot about the Indiana head coach once he did that, but Cignetti has got a chance to really pull off the major upset here on the road. I think he and his team probably feel a little slighted. They felt some sort of way about not getting a home game. I don't know that they really had a case, but nonetheless, it's a great matchup, in-state game. Got to love this kind of game. Hoosiers, Fighting Irish, who you have?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Fighting Irish to win this one, but I do think it's going to be a really good game. When you look at Indiana, you know, they had the one bad game this year, which was Ohio State. And that one really turned on two special teams plays. The bobbled punt right before the half, which gave Ohio State a touchdown seconds before the half, and then the punt return touchdown. And other than that, they had played Ohio State dead even pretty much in the first half. Second half, they sort of melded down a little bit. But I think when you look at Indiana, they beat Michigan this year. They beat Nebraska. And pretty much every team they beat strongly. They've got a good defensive front seven. I like the run game with Ellison, Lawton, and Black. And they've got a highly efficient quarterback in Curtis Rourke. He's hitting 70% this year with the 27-4 ratio. He's also a guy that's very efficient on third down, very top-notch QB. I put him as one of the top quarterbacks in the Big Ten this year. Now, Notre Dame has done the same thing. They've blown out almost every opponent they played. They've got a good defense despite losing some key players. Jeremiah Love's an exciting running back. Riley Leonard, you know, at the start of the year didn't throw any touchdown passes, but then all of a sudden, you know, he's got a 16-5 ratio this year, and he can hurt you running the football as well. So I think it's going to be a really good game. The Irish, of course, have the home field edge. Might lean with the points here with Indiana, but I think Notre Dame comes out with a good win, but should be one of the more entertaining bowl games this year.
Phil, let's head to Happy Valley, where you have Penn State sitting as a heavy favorite against visiting SMU. Interesting matchup. Recently, Andy Kotelnicki, highly touted OC for the Nittany Lions, announced he's staying put. His name was being mentioned, among other things, as the West Virginia candidate. And, you know, coming out of the Big Ten title game, another big loss against a big team. James Franklin, the indictment against him continues. So an opportunity as these playoffs get started, but against a very feisty SMU team. First of all, they kind of entered the season. I thought a lot of people were underrating them. You weren't, but a lot of people might have been. They were coming off an 11-win season last year. And even when they had that loss against BYU early in the season, people weren't taking them that seriously. Look what BYU is. Well, we didn't know what BYU was. So they go on a run. Now they suffer this emotional loss to Clemson. Good thing they have time to recover from it in the ACC title game loss. What do you see playing out with SMU visiting Penn State at Beaver Stadium?
Yeah, no, this one, I definitely like Penn State. When you look at SMU this year, they've played a very manageable schedule. I think if you look at all the top teams in the ACC, they pretty much avoided them all. One of the reasons I had SMU pretty high on the thing, as you mentioned, they started slow, but then played great. Once Kevin Jennings took over at quarterback, they were a different team. Jennings had a 22-8 ratio, 22 touchdown passes, just 8 interceptions, ran for 379. The defense, very solid, held opponents to 40 yards per game below their season average, but they played a very manageable schedule. Penn State played a tougher schedule, teams like Ohio State and Oregon, a very underrated USC team. And this game is at home in Happy Valley. It's white out. It's going to be cold. That's an advantage against a team from Texas. And I think Penn State, it does have a much better roster across the board. You look at their defense. While they didn't look great against Oregon, other than that, they've been tremendous this year, holding opponents to 91 yards per game, below their season average, number 6 in the country. They got Singleton and Allen at the backfield. They got Drew Alar at quarterback. They've got the home field edge. And boy, I tell you what, they have the opportunity in these first couple of games to make some hay in the playoffs and maybe get that James Franklin can't win a big game. You know, if he has 2 playoff wins under his belt, that probably is a big thing. So I think Penn State's going to take this one completely serious. They need a win over a big team, and I think they get it here. I'm going to take Penn State by a couple of touchdowns.
Phil, this is a really interesting game. Clemson just kind of found their way into the college football playoff. They seemed like they had no chance at all. They got a little help there towards the end to get to the ACC title game, and then they hold off SMU. Crazy finish in the championship game there in Charlotte. When you look at these two teams on paper, Texas clearly feels like they have the advantage in this game. But when you have a team like Clemson that comes in, has nothing to lose, they didn't expect to be here, I feel like this is a little bit of a dangerous matchup here for the Longhorns. I don't know if they win, but I think Clemson's got a shot to keep it close here. What do you think?
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. I think when you look at Clemson, they definitely have, they've got Dabo Swinney, who, of course, has the playoff pedigree. This guy's been in the playoffs many, many years. When you look at Clemson's losses this year, the Louisville game was a tough one. Georgia, of course, in the opener was a good second half. But they led South Carolina. They just gave up that late touchdown in the game. Had a little trouble with mobile quarterbacks. But overall, a decent season for Clemson. Texas has been dominant at times. Really like what I saw against Texas A&M in their win there. A&M's lone touchdown came on a return TD. Pretty much dominated that game. But prior to that, they had played, Vanderbilt they beat by 3. Florida, they took on a third-string quarterback. Arkansas, they beat by 10. Weren't overly dominant. So I think Clemson's going to come in here with that, hey, we're just little old Clemson type of attitude that Dabo has sometimes, and give Texas a good game. I do think Texas wins. I do think they have more talent. I think Texas is superior defensively and offensively to Clemson, and they're at home. But I can see Clemson giving them a game here.
Well, another Southern team heading north into the cold. I love that dimension to these playoffs. You've got Tennessee sitting at 10-2. They will be visiting 10-2 Ohio State in Columbus. Somewhat curious Tennessee team. The more the season went on, the stranger that loss to Arkansas looked. Obviously, losing on the road to Georgia is a forgivable sin, but that Arkansas thing still doesn't stack up. They're on the road against an Ohio State team. I have no idea what to expect in terms of a response after that Michigan loss by Ohio State. It almost feels like that Ohio State fan base, Phil, even if they go on a run and find a way to pull a couple upsets and win a championship, that asterisk will be there forever because of this Michigan loss. So what do you see playing out in this crazy matchup in Columbus?
Yeah, well, I can tell you what to expect from Ohio State. Ohio State has got a whole bunch of players that returned for this year to make it special. The loss to Michigan hurt badly, but they were given a reprieve. They are in the playoff, and now they actually have a chance to run the table and go ahead, win a national title, and cure everything. So it's like getting a last-minute pardon from the electric chair, and I think you're going to see a very excited Ohio State team at home. Now, the question would be the crowd. If they get down in this thing 10-0, is the crowd going to be booing the Ohio State team early in the game because they're so messed up by the Michigan one? That'll be interesting. Now, as far as Tennessee, Tennessee is not deep south. They're pretty much up north. In fact, when they played Vanderbilt, that was in 30-degree temperatures. So I don't think it's as bad as like a Florida team coming up here to Ohio State. But, the weather will, I think, give a slight edge to Ohio State. The matchup, I think, that favors Tennessee is their defensive line against Ohio State's offensive line. Remember, Ohio State not only lost their left tackle, they lost their center. As we saw against Michigan, that banged-up offensive line had just 77 yards rushing, 3.0 yards per carry, and they also struggled to stop the run. And one of the things, you look at Tennessee and you think they're a high-flying pass offense, but really they're at their best when they run the football. And this year, with Dylan Sampson, he's got nearly 1,500 yards, and Bishop, and even Nico running the football out of the quarterback position. They're at their best when they could run it, and Michigan ran the ball on Ohio State in the final game. So I do like the line of scrimmage matchup for Tennessee. I like the Ohio State's athletes at the wide receiver position, the home edge, and the overall players on the defense. So I'm going to call for Ohio State to come out of here with the win, but I do think it's going to be a really good game.
The heck with the playoff. Now the game that everyone's going to be having their eyes on this bowl season, that's the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. Last year, Neil Brown got dumped in Mayo. Maybe this year's winner gets dumped in Coffee Grounds. We'll see. Memphis, West Virginia, out in Frisco. Phil, this was kind of weird because when the bowl was first announced, West Virginia, if my mind serves me correct, they opened as like a 4.5 point favorite. Now it's completely swung to Memphis. From what I'm seeing right now, it looks like they're the 4.5 point favorite. I don't know what the odds makers were thinking at first. I thought it was more of a pick 'em, maybe a slight favorite to Memphis. Seems like it's probably in the right spot now. But as we've already kind of mentioned, this kind of feels like a shootout. But do you feel like West Virginia has a chance to find a way to come out on top of that shootout?
I think they do have a chance, provided everybody is focused on the game. Sometimes when you have an interim head coach, you have the coaching staff maybe looking for jobs, sending out resumes. You wonder if the players are hitting the portal. But with only 4 players in the portal so far for West Virginia, you sort of get the feeling that they might be focused on the game. And if that's the case, I do think their offense gets rolling. I know only 15 points against Texas Tech, but prior to that, they had been putting up some points. And, go back and watch the Memphis UTSA game. UTSA pretty much had their way with Memphis's defense, putting up 44 points. And the last couple games, I did like what I saw to Memphis against Tulane a lot. I think winning 10 games was important, especially when you have all your goals crushed. Memphis wanted to get they wanted to be the playoff team. There were a lot of folks pick to be the playoff team, not mine. In fact, I didn't even have one in the American Conference this year. But coming into that Tulane game, winning it, they now can get to 11 wins this year. They do have a very potent offense. Seth Hennigan is a dangerous QB, and going against that West Virginia secondary, you got to think he's going to put some points up. But I think West Virginia with Garrett Green, with White, Donaldson, I think they could put some points up as well. So I think my best play here is probably to go with the over. Sometimes these bowls are a crapshoot. You wonder who wants to be there. I know Memphis wants to be there. I think West Virginia wants to be there, and that means it could be an entertaining game. And a lot of times when a game means nothing like this, in the bowl preparation, you have extra time to prepare for the bowl. You're going to see some trick plays. You're going to see 4th down. What the heck? Let's go for it on 4th and 1. And sometimes that turns it into a high-scoring game. So we see a lot of these non-New Year's Day bowl games actually turn out to be high-scoring because of that factor.
Yeah, sometimes they're the most fun to watch. You're exactly right, Phil. And we'd be remiss if we had the author of the College Football Bible on ITG without getting his at least knee-jerk initial reaction. You haven't had much time, as busy as you are this time of year, to put much thought into it, I'm sure. But the recent hire of Rich Rodriguez, the prodigal son, returns to Morgantown after 17 years to take over the West Virginia football program. He was the 32nd head coach in West Virginia history. Now he becomes the 36th head coach in West Virginia football history. What's your initial reaction to Coach Rodriguez returning to Morgantown?
I like it. I think it's a good fit, provided the fan base rallies behind him, which I think they will, because Rich Rod's a winner, and I just absolutely love the job he did at Jacksonville State. I know I went over the team with Rich Rod in 2023, and they're taking a big step up. They were going from the FCS to the FBS, and I was wondering if they could handle it, and they did a tremendous job. He's got the run game, as always, and there was questions at quarterback, and then Zion Webb came back for him there, and then this year once again, with the job he did and getting them all the way to winning the title. And they were a big play for me in the championship game, because the game prior to that was meaningless to them. Western Kentucky was at home, needed everything to win it. And as it was, they almost beat Western Kentucky on the road there and then clubbed them in the championship game. I love the run game. I love the option. It's tough to stop. And defensively, they could play pretty good ball. And if he could take an FCS team and bring it into the FBS and do that, I think he's stepping into a much better situation here at West Virginia. West Virginia has the talent. And I think you're going to see West Virginia towards the top of the Big 12 in the very near future. Rich Rod's a heck of a coach.
Well, Phil, we appreciate you so much once again for coming on today and throughout the entire season. And we'll see if we can get you back on sometime, either throughout the offseason or next year. Anyways, go ahead and let us know anything that you got going on for the bowl season in terms of picks and where people can find that.
Hey, I appreciate that. Yeah, each and every week I put up on philsteele.com my Phil Steele Plus tour. The tours had a great record and another winning week last week. So do make sure you check out the tour. You just go to the front menu of philsteele.com, and right there, the tour is right in the front. We've got a new one up each and every Thursday each week. And then also right now, we're taking orders for next year's magazine, the VIP and the Super VIP. Yeah. I will have a blog up there probably early next week explaining what to do. But if you get in on the VIP or the Super VIP for the magazine, you get a lot of stuff other than just the magazine, but you also get the magazine first before anybody else in the country, and generally 3 weeks before it even hits the newsstands, because as it rolls off the press, we start mailing out our VIPs. So make sure you check out philsteele.com and check out that blog in the next couple of days.
It is a can't miss.
Trust me when I tell you, it makes you feel special when you get that thing and your buddies are all like, hey, where'd you get that? Hey, how'd you get it? Well, all you got to do is this, because it does. You're part of the anointed club. Last thing I got to ask you, Phil, and we'll let you get out of here. Seeding in these playoffs in this first year, this is a work in progress, obviously. A lot's been made of the fact that Oregon, as the top seed and an unbeaten team, if anybody's earned the right to have an easier path, it's the Oregon Ducks. That's not the case when you look at the way the bracket falls. Meanwhile, Penn State, who has kind of stumbled into the spot that they're into, losing to Ohio State, losing the Big Ten championship game, people regard their path as much easier. Do you think that maybe reseeding needs to be done? Is that one of the next steps after the announcements come out and they look at the entire field?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the top four teams in the country are Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Georgia. And in one half of the bracket, Georgia's bracket, there's one of those four teams. And in the other half of the bracket, you have got not only Oregon, and you have Texas, and you also have Ohio State in there. I mean, it is a loaded bracket, and to get through that half is ridiculous. And Oregon, the number one seed, has to play Ohio State, then beat Texas. And as you mentioned, Penn State, I think, has the dream set up. And Texas has a good start, at least, where they play Clemson and then they play Arizona State. So they need to just make the top seeds the top seeds and avoid this nonsense, because Oregon does have a tough route. They'd have to beat Ohio State. They would have to beat Texas and then, of course, play in the title game against a team like Georgia, whereas Georgia, I think Georgia's just got it set up where they can actually walk right to the title game.
Well, there you have it. The one, the only, the Phil Steele. Phil, thank you so much again, and we'll talk to you here soon.
Hey, really enjoyed talking to you guys all season long. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely.
Thanks
You're
so much,
always
Phil.
welcome back. Absolutely. We'll go ahead and wrap up the end of this show on this other side of ITG.
At Johnston Equipment, you'll find the area's best selection of Coyote tractors and loaders. Stop in and see all our compact equipment with multiple options available, including full cab, diesel, rubber tires, or track loaders. You'll find attachments and implements to get anything done, and low-rate financing options. Johnston Equipment has what you need to get the job done right. Come see the full line today at Johnston Equipment on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan, or visit JohnstonEQ.com.
Back in the gun here as we wrap up this episode, the final one of Phil Steele this year. It's been great to talk to him all season long, get his thoughts, his insight. And let's be honest, he was pretty dead set on the Mountaineers this year in his take. He was on West Virginia whenever everyone wasn't. He was probably one of the more optimistic people around West Virginia, despite all the struggles. Still had them covering games that they probably shouldn't have covered. But obviously, love having Phil on this show. Before we get into our final thoughts here on the show, another thank you to Fortis for roof performance and financial certainty guarantee. Be sure to visit fortis.us.com. And also a shout out to our friends at Johnston's Equipment. Get 0% financing for up to 72 months with approved credit on select Coyote tractors. In stock now at Johnston Equipment, Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. Jed, again, I love that you were able to get this connection with Phil because it gives so much insight. I know the fans love it. And anytime you get a brainiac like him on the show to get some insight from someone like that on the Mountaineers every week is pretty cool.
It sure is. And to have him in the fold as part of the ITG family, I think that, a couple of years ago, I was trying to think of the best way to approach this. We wanted to expand beyond just the West Virginia games and cover things at large, some of the bigger top 25 games, the rest of the Big 12. And it's a heavy lift for us to do that internally. Okay.
Yeah.
To do the proper research that's warranted, to do it justice. Right. And so I started asking myself, I was like, well, who better than Phil Steele? I mean, worst he can do is say no, he can't eat you. So we worked out an arrangement with Phil. He was all about it. And next thing you know, here he is for a couple years in a row now doing this. But I like the fact that we could have him on. This is very timely. He gives us his reaction and his thoughts on Rich as the new hire, and he also gives us his thoughts on the matchup and the bowl game. And I couldn't agree more. Both these teams, it would be so easy in a bowl game of this level of significance to not be dialed in for either of these teams for different reasons.
Absolutely.
Whether it's Memphis because they were hoping to be a playoff team, or whether it's West Virginia because they don't have a head coach. But look, there's different situations when you don't have a head coach. Some teams are truly rudderless when they lose their head coach. That's not the case. That's obviously not the case with West Virginia. Chad Scott has done a yeoman's job of stepping in, filling that void in the interim with the interim tag. Obviously, when you look at the staff, they're dialed in. You don't sign 21 kids in your recruiting class without a head coach, without being dialed in. You don't hold this limited number of kids in the portal this close to the bowl without being dialed in. So the staff's dialed in, the team's dialed in, and the same with SMU. They finished strong. So they were very obviously that Tulane game to me, Schuyler, when I watched that on tape, that was impressive. That was very impressive. I mean, you always see they're a highly intelligent team. You can tell there's a lot of veterans on that team, but I didn't know what to expect when I sat down there watching the coaches tape. And I've been very impressed by Memphis, and I was more impressed with how they finished their season. So we are absolutely, with winning number 10, just as Phil said, mattered that much to them, then so will winning number 11. So they're going to take West Virginia's best shot, and West Virginia is going to take their best shot. And I think it makes for great TV. I think it's going to make for an entertaining game. Neither team has much to lose. So let's see what plays out. Let's have some fun. Let's head down to Frisco. And I'm competitive. I always look, these bowl games, we only have a select number of bowl wins in the history of our program. Let's get one more. Under any circumstances, if you're afforded that opportunity, let's go out and play well enough to beat a 10-win team and get one more. Schuyler, how many bowl wins do we have over 10-win teams? That's a short list.
That's even shorter.
Oklahoma jumps to mind, right? Oklahoma jumps to mind. Georgia jumps to mind. You got the Sugar Bowl over Oklahoma, or excuse me, the Fiesta over Oklahoma. You got the Sugar over Georgia. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. It's a short list.
Yeah.
It's a short list of bowl wins over 10-win teams. So, that will be a nice little feather, a nice little trophy to add to on display in the Pushkar Center. So, yeah, absolutely. Let's go out and take care of business. Let these seniors finish strong and send them out the right way. And quite frankly, I want Chad Scott to be 1-0 as a head coach.
Yeah.
I remember, speaking of Rich, I remember back when Rich was the interim head coach at Tulane, a very similar situation, except Tommy had left Tulane. Tommy Bowden had left Tulane to take the Clemson job after the 99 season. That unbeaten Tulane team that Rich and Tommy were coaching when Rich had Sean King as the quarterback, and they were setting all these offensive records and left and right, and they were blowing up Conference USA. Well, they went into a bowl game against BYU, a good BYU team, and Rich took over as the interim, and they went out and won 41-27, and they carried Rich off the field. I would not at all be surprised, knowing Chad Scott and the
Yes.
meaning Chad Scott has to this locker room. If we find a way, we're fortunate enough to find a way to go out and be competitive and make a play in the fourth quarter and beat a very good Memphis team, don't at all be surprised if Chad Scott's not carried off the field on the shoulders of these players, because they mean that much to him.
Yeah, I think he means so much, like you said, and it's very evident when the kids speak about him in press conferences, and whenever I talk to these guys in recruiting, I mean, they all talk the world about Chad Scott, and I think you're right. Like, the one thing that I think needs to happen, I don't know if it's even possible, but all of the non-college football playoff bowl games need to take place like in the first 2 weeks of the regular season coming to an end. And I know that would be a nightmarish thing for television and all that stuff, and it's probably not even possible, but or if you at least bump the transfer portal window back until after those games are done, because you want to keep all these kids together so that they can play in the bowl game and that they can have the extra game film that they can put on tape for, whoever it is that they want to have it whenever they go to the transfer portal. And I think that's probably a key to this as well. When you have an early bowl game, you're able to keep your team together, and that was one key for West Virginia to get this done. And whether or not they stay here, you and I don't know. There's going to be guys that leave the team regardless. There was going to be teams or guys that entered the portal if Neil Brown was still here. But when you have that ability to play in a bowl game early, have that chance to get another game on tape, and like you said, you have nothing to lose. And I think that alone can help take some pressure off of you. All season long, it was we're trying to stay in the hunt for the Big 12 title, trying to stay in the hunt for the Big 12 title. And now that has been removed, the noise around the head coach situation, that's been removed. You already know who the head coach is going to be moving forward. You know those conversations with Rich Rod will be taking place shortly. All you have to do is just focus on this game, and you can do some things like Phil said. You're going to have some wrinkles up your sleeve. You can do some trick plays, go for it on 4th and 10 on your own 25 for all it matters. So I think that's what makes these games fun and interesting, and I'm ready for it. I mean, it's not going to be the most fun game in terms of, it's not the Orange Bowl, it's not the Fiesta Bowl, it's not the Sugar Bowl, but it's a bowl game. Like you said, you don't have very many bowl wins, and especially against top 10 teams. This is a one way to go out on top and send those seniors out right, especially guys like Garrett Green and Wyatt Milam that have put so much time into this program.
What you've done, Scholars, you've taken the lasso, you've lassoed me right around the waist, and now you've dragged me out into the weeds, and here I am. And now I have to respond. You're talking about the window. You're talking about the portal window in December.
Yeah.
You're talking about the crazy schedule. You're talking about the bowl games need to be moved. We've said this many times. Revisit the podcast in which we discussed it. Look, in my estimation, what you do, you take your bowl games, you keep those same committees. You're not firing those bowl committees. You're reassigning them. They are now kickoff classics. Okay. Well, West Virginia is not playing Memphis in the Frisco Bowl, the Coffee Bowl. They're playing Memphis in the kickoff, the Frisco Coffee, the Scooters Coffee Frisco Kickoff Classic, first game of the season. And that's what you do. You have the greatest, grandest opening 2 weekends of any sport spread over 2 weekends. The TV inventory would be incredible to start the season. And that's what you do. Then once you get into December, you're like, well, Jed, what do you do for all this lost TV inventory in December? Well, first of all, you're going to have an expanded playoff here pretty soon, even beyond the already expanded 12 team. It's at least going to go to 16. Look, I'm not so sure it should go much further. I'll entertain any discussion. But, 12 is better than 4. 16 probably better than 12. Yeah, but I can't hear that 64 is better than 16. No, I don't know about all that. But so what do you do for the additional inventory? Well, I've always said you need an NIT for football, and you need to find a way to make it meaningful. Put some high stakes, put different things on the table. Maybe whoever wins your NIT. Yes, NIL attached to it, money attached to it. So if a team from the Big 12 wins that secondary tournament, then every Big 12 team is awarded by their TV media partners, whoever hosts this thing, whoever sponsors this thing, whoever broadcasts this thing, an additional X amount of dollars toward their trust, toward their NIL. toward their funding. So and now you could argue how many teams go in that, but it would make for additional games and an additional tournament going on for TV inventory to entertain us, which we're so conditioned and wired to do. We need college football games on during the holidays, and we need crazy ones on. We need all these matchups late at night, early in the day. So that's how you do that. Your bowl games get moved to start the season. Nobody's sitting them out. Nobody's opting out of bowl games now. So it's more meaningful for your bowl partners and for your TV partners. Well, here you go. Now you have a tournament for the teams that didn't get into the tournament. And here's why they'd be interested in winning that. You can have payouts. You can have buyouts. The winning team, the players get X amount, just like they do in the Super Bowl and the playoffs. So why would they want to sit out? Well, maybe some of the marquee players would, but guess what? A lot of the kids wouldn't. If there's a big payout, a big carrot being dangled at the end. So, yeah, I mean, that's how you can restructure it and help make more sense. These windows need revisited. It's crazy. It's insane. It's unsustainable and it's untenable. So a lot of change is coming beyond even what we recognize. But this has been the first in a major step. Next year will be the biggest step we've seen so far after that House decision. It's expected to be certified in January. So once those things kick in next year, the true change will start to set in. Then I think you're ultimately working towards somewhere down the road, some form of collective bargaining on the side of the players. That's when things will. Not until collective bargaining sets in, which I think is absolutely going to be necessary to stabilize this thing on some level. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just going to be some version of the Wild West. But I would say this isn't even the Wild West. At least the Wild West had sheriffs and deputies. This doesn't even have that. It's open free agency nonstop. And so give the players.
Welcome to the college, Bill Belichick, by the way.
Yes. By the way, I'm telling you right now, I so desperately wish we were playing them in a bowl game like next year, because I want to prepare for a Bill Belichick team. I want to do my deep dive on a Bill Belichick coach team. So, yeah, that's interesting. So, yeah, the calendar needs change, but let me close with this, with what you said. There's all the reasons in the world to let's give these seniors what they deserve. They persevered. They've been through a ton. They've, experienced the transition from the pre-portal era into the portal era. They've lost their coach. They've been through a ton. So, and they have a very, very sour taste in their mouth after not showing up in Lubbock and getting raced out of the house the way they did. I mean, I'm still seeing tortillas in my nightmares flying around. And so let's finish the right way. And as I mentioned, on another episode, let's get a little bowl streak going. We won last year in Charlotte. Let's win this year in Frisco, get 2 in a row and hand that off to Coach Rod and see what he can do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Bowl wins are fun. And the one thing I'll say too, and it's very, very cliche, but it's so true. You can never take any game for granted. You never know when it's going to be your last one, whether it's injury or something else happening in your life. Like that could be the last time that you strap up and play football. So I think a lot of these kids, they kind of put that to the back of their minds, but some of them realize that and take advantage of it. So, and I think that's why you see guys like Wyatt Milam, who has really no reason to play in this game, probably going to play a little bit in this game. So a lot of interesting stuff heading into this bowl game. Check out the bowl preview that Jed, Wes, and Owen did. You can go back and watch our reaction to Rich Rodriguez getting hired. We brought Pat McAfee on. Tremendous. Hats off to him, by the way, for coming together. We threw that thing together at the last second. Owen shot him a text. Pat's like, "Yep, let's hop on," and was on the link in literally 30 seconds. So very cool for him to do that. Didn't have to, but thank you to Pat for doing that, and thank you guys for tuning into all of our episodes this year of ITG. We're not going anywhere. When the season ends, we'll still have content, especially with Rich Rob being here. There's a lot to talk about this offseason, so we'll have plenty of stuff for you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page at In the Gun Podcast.
Subs.
Yes, and follow us on X at that same handle. So thank you guys for tuning in, and as always, be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WV football podcast. You've been In the Gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
Tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.